Welcome to Blind Level Tech. This isn't just accessible tech talk. This is technology on a whole new level. We're showing you just how possible it is to live the life you want.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Blind Level Tech. I am your host, Evan Starnes. Apple has just released a massive announcement with a ton of new accessibility improvements coming to iOS 19. There's a ton of stuff to talk about. When I heard about these improvements, I was planning on, making an episode. I was going to put together an outline. I actually got a message and heard from Jonathan that somebody from Vision Ireland wanted to be on the show and kind of talk about these improvements with me. And, naturally I kind of figured this will be a lot more fun with a guest on the show than just trying to do this all by my lonesome. So joining us today is David Redmond from Vision Ireland. Welcome to Blind Level Tech.
Thank you so much, Evan. Thank you for having me on the podcast. It's my first time and it feels great. It's all shiny and new. I love it.
Isn't it? It's fun. I mean, gosh, we've been talking for almost like 20 minutes prior to recording this episode, but how is your, it's 6 o'clock in Ireland right now, 6 in the evening. Yep. How's your evening treating you so far?
Do you know what? So we're actually going through a bit of, and this is very rare in Ireland, we're going through a bit of a heat wave, which is really awesome. So before sitting down to record this evening, I headed out for a lovely walk around the business complex here in Vision Ireland. And the sun is glorious, it must be said. So the weekend is looking good. It's Friday as we record this. So I'm really looking forward to the weekend. An exciting round ahead, I'm sure.
Yeah, it'll be a nice, warm, outdoorsy kind of weekend for sure. There's a whole bunch of stuff to unpack here with iOS 19. We haven't even heard of anything about actual iOS 19 itself. This has been for, really it was for Global Accessibility Awareness Day here in the US, but I figured we kind of start out with just some of the improvements under the vision section of accessibility. Can you start us off?
Yeah, for sure. So there's some really, really nice things in here, some of which is Apple almost playing catch up. I think we often think of Apple as being ahead when it comes to accessibility, and in many ways they are, but they are playing catch up here in some areas. And one of those is the first one worth mentioning, which I think is going to be really cool, especially for those with low vision. Is a new feature called Accessibility Reader. So what the Accessibility Reader is going to do is this will effectively act as, I guess, an immersive reader that will work across all apps, presuming that those apps are accessible and so on. But I could be in, for example, a news app where there's an article, or I could be in emails, or I could be in any form of text-based app. Maybe it's a document. And I can then launch this new accessibility reader. And for those who've dabbled on the Android side, this is going to be very like, from what we can tell right now, the Google Reading Mode, which has been very popular with Android users. And it's going to allow you to adjust the text size, the color contrast. Presumably, you will be able to get it to read the actual content to you as well. So this, I suppose, Evan, is a great way that will kind of bridge those who may not be quite voiceover users yet, but they do need some longer strings of text read out to them for ease of access. So I'm really excited. I think this is going to be a real exciting new feature from Apple, I think.
I think so. And I was kind of trying to think of what would be some practical uses for this, because, it works with text on your phone and that also text, that the camera sees. I'm wondering if this will finally mean that we'll have, a proper practical built-in solution for reading like documents and restaurant menus and stuff like that, potentially.
Possibly. I mean, I've been lucky enough to try out the new visual intelligence features that have come in the latest version of Apple Intelligence with iOS. And I think we're starting to get something now that is close, not quite, but close to having something like, Be My AI or something like that built into the system. And it's not quite as smooth with VoiceOver yet, but I think if we can start, building some of this stuff into the Magnifier app, I think then the Magnifier app that's built into, remember this, like every
device.
Apple device, then we start really looking at having something like, that's basically seeing AI built into every device. And for those who might not be aware of those accessibility features, they're much more likely to stumble across this by accident than stumbling across something like seeing AI on the App Store. So I think this is really exciting and will definitely benefit lots of people.
Well, definitely. And perhaps, it might be a good way to help people, even if the solution is great, if they want to discover other things like Be My Eyes or Seeing AI, it might help point them to that. But it's also, Magnifier is also, coming to the Mac now with live recognition and stuff. And what does that mean for Mac users?
I mean, I think it's really exciting for Mac users. I mean, on the Windows side, I've seen a lot of devices, like the MagniLink is one of the big ones. And years ago in Ireland, there was a very popular assistive technology product called the Opti. This was from a company called Ash Technology. And basically, you would connect this to a computer, and you were able to zoom in, you were able to, change the colors, effectively use your laptop as a mini CCTV kind of device, if you will. And this is where this has its biggest benefits, I think, is in areas like the classroom for students who want to maybe look at notes on a whiteboard or interactive board. Or maybe they want to just use it to read books and stuff like that. Basically, the new Magnifier app on the Mac is going to allow you to connect an external camera or crucially use your iPhone with continuity camera. And you will be able to zoom in, change the color. You will actually be able to run OCR on that text and use it with the reading mode, the accessibility reader that we mentioned earlier. So there's lots of new features that I think won't be of use to everybody, but in certain environments, there are some schools that rely very heavily on Apple products. And I think that's where this is going to come into its own, I think.
Well, and especially, I feel like this is really useful if you're like a college student and you have to deal with a lot of inaccessible documents. And I think I kind of circling back to your point of Apple kind of catching up. I really think this is because, I've seen a lot of new features with things like JAWS with their Picture Smart and all their fancy new OCR capabilities. I would be interested to know, too, if you could make it. You'd probably make it also work with like a traditional document, like a flatbed scanner too, but
I don't know. I mean, but even if not, there are quite a lot of cameras like this now that are set up specifically as document scanners and document readers. So even if you weren't using your traditional flatbed scanner, you would be able to presumably just use a regular document reader, which, you can get cheap versions of those now. So I think, and what I would hope as well, and I touched on this in an article for our Tech on Tap newsletter this week, is that, similar to how I suppose, accessibility reader and the improvements in Magnifier might actually guide someone to something like Be My Eyes or, apps like that. Perhaps the Magnifier on Mac will increase the demand for these kinds of devices to a point where there will actually be new hardware to support these devices at cheaper costs. So I think there's a lot to like about this. It is definitely, I think, Apple playing catch up a little bit with the Windows side. But I think the way they've done it is really nice.
I agree. And especially, the fact that this is no extra cost to the user is huge. And I think the fact that, when there was COVID and remote learning was a thing, teachers still needed to present things like documents, which really did help bring down the cost of document scanners. So hopefully this will kind of just increase that trend, and it's really just a matter really of breaking down kind of those accessibility or even cost barriers to getting access to this information. And
it's a really interesting point that I hadn't considered, is that the cost of those devices is, as you say, coming down now, even as a result of COVID. So, there, as crazy as it is to say, that there were some benefits, albeit them small. But no, it's a really interesting point that I hadn't considered. So, yeah.
No, definitely. Well, and on the topic of giving access, they've added a really cool and kind of unexpected new Braille access feature, which kind of gives the iPhone some almost Braille note taker like functionality if you have a Braille display hooked up.
Yeah, for sure. Now, this is more your forte than mine, but absolutely, there's some really cool stuff in here. It's going to be able to work as an app launcher. So you will be able to use either a Braille display or Braille keyboard or a Braille screen input for that matter. But you will be able to interact with the device in that way. It's going to be able to work with BRF, Braille Ready Format. Those are BRF files. So those are traditionally created on, Braille note takers, the likes of your Braille Sense. So you will be able to interact with those on iPhone, which I think is really cool, that, it's going to have that capability. There's lots to like. One of the things that I think we've noticed increasingly is for those who are deafblind or have dual sensory loss.
Yeah.
The feature to be able to use live transcripts of conversations and get those presented to you in real time on a Braille display. I think that kind of technology is really, really cool. In the year of Braille 200, this is obviously 200th anniversary of Braille. It is moving Braille forward, which is really exciting, isn't it?
It definitely is. And it further proves the point that I've been making on this podcast for years. I think we've been doing it on other podcasts, that Braille is here to stay, period.
Yeah, for
End
sure.
of story.
It's evolving, and I think the code is evolving. The technology we use to interact with Braille is evolving. Like, we're doing a podcast soon on a device called the Page Braille, which actually modifies a traditional Perkins Brailler to allow it to effectively act as a Bluetooth keyboard, which is like really, really cool. But it just shows how something very traditional and old school in the form of Braille is really being embraced through modern technology. And that, I think, is down to the code that Louis Braille invented,
Absolutely. Well, and I mean, kind of talking of old, I think most people, when they think of Braille, they still think of that old school, Perkins Braille writers, Slate and Styli, and paper Braille. But yeah, most people don't even really conceptualize or consider the new technologies that have been out there for decades now at this point. And I think too, on the same subject, this will be really good for folks that have wanted a Braille note taker, for the longest time, but maybe they just have, like, if you have like an iPad or an iPhone and an e-reader, a free NLS e-reader, you've effectively now got a note taker. And I think that is honestly pretty awesome.
It'll be cheaper than a Braille Sense. We'll put it that way.
Yes. And I mean, as a lover of Braille Senses, while I will always advocate for the Braille Sense, I think, this is going to, again, this is all just breaking down accessibility barriers. And kind of talking of accessibility, So I'll start for, there was an app I feel like many years ago now. It kind of went away in like 2016 or 2017. And it was done by the Braille Institute, and it was called Via. And basically what it was a big giant app suite. And you could put apps that were voiceover compatible with low vision aids, whatever it might be. And it was a great way to have like an accessible app hub. But Apple's adding something pretty similar in their app store, called accessibility labels.
Yeah, for sure. And that's really interesting. I wasn't aware of that service before, but this to me, the way I've been thinking of this is they're almost integrating something like AppleVis and AppleVis reviews into the App Store. Developers will be able to disclose compatibility with different accessibility features. So whether it supports, dynamic text, whether it supports voiceover, whether it supports all of these things. I think the one area I would like to see them expand on this slightly is to allow users to actually provide reviews of this, because we can't have, a company to say, yes, we're voiceover accessible, but not actually be voiceover accessible. And I think, hopefully that doesn't happen. But I think all in all, the fact that you can, now check if something is going to support voiceover or whatever accessibility feature you need, be that switch control or whatever, to check whether it's going to support that before you actually, pay or download that app, even if it's free, before you make that decision. I think that, information is power, and I think that can only be a good thing to have that displayed up front.
Well, and I'm hoping it will hold, especially if developers see that when they're creating apps. I'm hoping this will be a good way to hold developers accountable for accessibility.
You'd be hoping so. I mean, we have a sister company here called Viali, and Viali do basically accessibility audits of apps and stuff like that. They work with some of the biggest companies here in Ireland. And I think from that point of view, I think what this will do is it will raise awareness of accessibility among developers, rather than always having to have people who are blind or visually impaired or people with other disabilities having to go and, fight for these things, because all developers are going to want to be accessible when they can take the credit for being accessible. And that's sad to say in some ways, but it is reality. It's legislation. So we have the European Accessibility Act. You guys have the Americans with Disabilities Act. And I think, now adding this new, I suppose, tool that allows you to effectively show off your accessibility credentials, I think that will hopefully raise the awareness and the desire to become accessible for developers, hopefully.
That's ultimately what I'm hoping. And it is just a matter of, because if your app is accessible or not, you're potentially shutting out a very wide user base there. But that's a topic for a whole nother episode. We haven't really given the Vision Pro much attention now in this episode, mainly because, I think it's a cool technology, but it's not on a lot of people's heads at the moment. But they've added some really, honestly, very practical and potentially game-changing accessibility features to the Vision Pro, including the ability they've added the zoom feature. So not only are you able to zoom in and out on text, but you can zoom in and out on your environment.
I got to try a device a couple of months ago called the Vision Buddy. And the Vision Buddy was and is a virtual reality headset that you wear it, and it allows you to zoom into things in your environment. It's, there was a lot to like about the Vision Buddy. There was also, it had its drawbacks. But what the Vision Buddy did for me is it proved that this idea could actually work. And I'm really excited now to see that Apple are actually taking that, and again, it's that integrating it into a product that already exists. And really, you've got to give Apple some credit here, because we talked about them playing catch up earlier on. But this is an area where they're being a leader. I mean, you have VoiceOver on the Vision Pro, you have these new Zoom features, and you could compare that with a device like the Meta Quest, formerly the Oculus headsets. But those devices don't even have screen readers yet.
What? Okay, I did not know that. I thought they...
Yeah.
Wow. So
yeah,
that's huge, because at least every product that I feel like Apple has made in recent times has come accessible. It might not be perfect, but it's there and it exists. It's not just a feature that somebody forgot to implement or what have you. And they've also added, aside from like Zoom and all that, they've added live recognition, and I am very curious to see how this would work. I have played with, and actually I use, when I want to read stuff very quickly, I just whip out the magnifier app. I 4-finger triple tap, hit text, and then I can just read tea bags, quick instructions, food labels. I mean, maybe it's not as thorough or accurate as seeing AI, but it's right there within like a quick little shortcut. But I'm wondering now if the information and level of detail and latency, of course, too, is going to be better or different on the Vision Pro.
Well, I'd imagine it will be, purely out of the fact that the cameras that the Vision Pro has are absolutely insane. So I think it's one of these things that it's only going to get better in time as we have better cameras, better AI, better processors. All of these things, they add up to make an ultimately better, tool. And yes, the Vision Pro is a very expensive tool, and we can't even get it in Ireland yet, unfortunately. But I think it's going to play an increasing role for people when it comes to accessibility. And especially in this, probably got glossed over a little bit, but they're now opening that camera up to third-party developers of accessibility apps. And they specifically mention Be My Eyes here. So I think there's a lot in this to like, and there's definitely a good trajectory of Apple being a leader in this area, which is really exciting.
Absolutely. And we're still on generation 1 of the Vision Pro. Yep. And I mean, I think back to the days when the first Apple Watch came out, for instance. It had VoiceOver and stuff. But it was super quirky, and honestly, like, you couldn't hear it very well. And then they had like the gold version that was like $17,000. Like, they threw stuff at the wall just to see what stuck, and they found their niche with the watch. And now, the Vision Pro is just so new and so out there that it kind of just, it will find its place. And I do think as, an accessibility tool, that it might mean, you might be able to get one through like a vocational rehabilitation organization, or, maybe get a discount or something, which would also be cool.
It would be brilliant.
Indeed. But there's one thing you can't really, well, maybe you could get from a vocational rehabilitation's office, though, which happens to be a good old sandwich of the week. And these always come up very suddenly, which is always fun.
They sure do. I have been, I must say, Evan, this, I've listened to to Blind Level Tech a lot. And I must say, this is the moment. I know we enjoyed talking about all the technology stuff, but this is the moment I live for.
Sandwich of the week.
Indeed.
Well, I guess what is your sandwich of the week then?
Okay, right. So I'm going outside the box here. But there is a traditional Irish sandwich. And I'm going to tell you what it's called, and I'm pretty sure you won't have any idea what it is, but it is a tato sandwich. Have you ever heard of a tato sandwich?
No, but I got to tell you, when I said the sandwich of the week for some reason, and this is completely unrelated, I promise you, but a sandwich with mashed potatoes in it popped into my head, which is hilarious.
That's interesting. So a potato sandwich isn't actually, I suppose, mashed potatoes, but these are, so potatoes are kind of like, we would call them crisps over here. You guys would
Like a latke.
You guys would call them chips, I guess, kind of like Pringles.
Yum.
So a potato sandwich is almost an Irish delicacy. They have different flavors. So there's cheese and onion, smoky bacon, and salt and vinegar being the most common. And you can actually, you just put these in a sandwich. White bread, specifically Brennan's white bread, which is another Irish brand, but absolutely amazing. So potatoes with a bit of butter on white bread. And they used to actually sell this on trains, and there were people ringing into radio shows and everything when they stopped selling potato sandwiches on trains here in Ireland. But a potato sandwich is an absolute delicacy. The best way I would suggest for someone stateside to try this is, do you know if you get those kind of tubes of Pringles?
Yeah, absolutely.
You know the way they kind of have that kind of quirky shape where they'll almost fit over your wrist, if you will.
Yeah, it's like almost like a taco shell shape.
Sure, a shell is a great way to kind of describe it. But if you kind of crush that, put it in, like crush just loads of them. Take loads of them, crush them, put them in a sandwich with butter, maybe the sour cream and onion if you guys have that over there. Crush that, put it in a sandwich with butter, and then you will have, it won't be as good as a potato sandwich, I can assure you, but you will have a really, really nice sandwich to enjoy. That is a mix of salt and lovely flavors.
Absolutely. Well, you've motivated me to go a little outside the box myself. And so for my sandwich this week, I'm actually going to go with a s'more because it's a sandwich. It's just a sandwich of graham crackers and chocolate and marshmallows. But I think with all of the talk about, like the weather and it getting all nice out, it makes me really want to have like a bonfire. And I do enjoy a good s'more or two. So that's going to be my sandwich of the week for this week.
When I think of s'mores, I always think we have like an activity camp here for visually impaired kids called Camp Abilities. And I did Camp Abilities growing up when I was like 13 or 14. And on one of the nights we had like a campfire and everybody just sat around it and made s'mores. It's kind of awesome.
That sounds fun. I love those summer camps, man.
They are the business.
Fun times. Well, David, first of all, thank you for joining us today for really talking about all of these new features. And I'm really excited I'm going to need to find like a beta testing device because I don't have one currently, so I can mess with some of this stuff, but it's been fun.
It really has, and thank you so much for having me. Keep up the great work that you guys are doing over at Aftersight and with Blind Level Tech and all of your other shows as well. And thank you for having me.
Well, where can people find you? Because you have a podcast.
We sure do. So, Vision Ireland have our own technology podcast. So you can search on all the different podcast apps. For Talking Technology with VI Labs. That's our technology brand. So Talking Technology. Or you can sign up for our Tech on Tap newsletter. So we publish that every single Friday. And we cover all the latest technology for people who are blind or visually impaired. This week, we covered those Apple updates. We went into some detail about that, what that's going to look like. Other things that we'd often cover include Braille, the smart home, all of these kind of exciting things and technology that can really benefit those of us who have sight loss. So yeah, loads of technology content. You can find us on all of the podcast apps by searching Talking Technology. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel. That's just VI Labs Accessibility. Or you can go and find out all the details that you need over on our website. It's vi.ie.
Awesome. Well, David, thank you so much for joining us this week. We're going to have you back on for a part 2 next week, too. So I'm definitely excited to get that recorded. That's going to be a fun one. So
thank you so much.
Absolutely. And listeners, too, if you have any feedback or questions, comments for this show that you would like to tell us, you can always leave a voicemail at 720-712-8856 or send an email to feedback@aftersight.org. We'll be back next week for part 2 with David Redmond. Thank you all so much for listening to another episode of Blind Level Tech. My name is Evan Starnes, and I'll talk to you guys again next week.